What is going on, guys? Joe Potch here. As you can see by the title of the video, this is my Avengers Endgame, very late Avengers Endgame review. I wanted to review Avengers Endgame for a long time, and well, it's finally here, my review, what I think of it. I mean, I'm a little rusty because I haven't seen the movie in a while, in a couple months, but I still remember a lot of it. I still watch a lot of clips online of the movie, so we're going to get right into it. Avengers Endgame review with spoilers, because this movie's been out for a long time. Non-spoiler review. Here's my 5-second non-spoiler review. I loved it. Here's spoiler review. So let me first get out of the way that Avengers Endgame is, for me, Avengers Endgame, while I liked it and enjoyed it, had a great time, I think it was way overhyped, just like Infinity War. That's just my personal opinion. But let's get right into it. It starts out with Tony in space with Nebula, and they're playing a game, and he uses Iron Man. He uses his helmet to send a message to his wife Pepper, and he thinks he's about to die, and then Captain Marvel rescues him, and then they land, and they're back at Avengers HQ. I believe they're there, and then Tony and Steve get into an argument. And it's very sad, they CGI him to be skinny and whatnot, and I thought that was pretty cool, because he hasn't eaten in a while, he doesn't have a lot of water, not a lot of food, he's in space. That makes sense. So they have an argument and all that, and I'm trying to remember this movie the best I can, and then Tony eventually faints, and then Captain Marvel's like, hey, why don't we just go kill him right now? And they're like, I don't know if that's a good idea, blah blah, and then Raccoon eventually shows them that Thanos used the stones recently, and again, on a planet, so they ping that where he is, and they go find him, and Captain Marvel flies from the ship where Steve and Natasha and Tony and all these people are inside the ship. She flies down and recons the planet, and then finds out it's just him there, so they all go in, and basically, essentially, they get the gauntlet and find out that the stones are not in the gauntlet, so Captain Marvel basically sneak attacks Thanos by dive bombing through the house as he's cooking some sort of stew, tackles him, wraps her arm around gets him in a chokehold, and then Steve, Natasha, Raccoon, Thor, they all come in, and Thor cuts Thanos' hand and head. Hand off first. Raccoon flips over the gauntlet and sees that there are no stones in there, and Thanos reveals that he destroyed the stones so that there's no chance of them redoing anything or whatnot, and it nearly killed him. He's all burnt on one side really bad, and his arm's all weird looking. And then Thor cuts his head off, and he just goes into the state of, I cannot believe I failed my team. I cannot believe I let this happen. I should have just went for a lethal shot. I mean, he blames it all on himself why they lost. So then it jumps to a 5-year time jump, and everyone's sad and mourning, and but they're trying to get over it, and the world honestly kind of looks almost back to normal. It's not, there are parts of the world that are overgrown with stuff, things of that nature. There shows this huge aerial drone shot or helicopter shot, which is really cool, of the Statue of Liberty with boats surrounding it because everyone's going towards it for hope and whatnot, and they show a stadium, this really cool foggy shot of the Statue of Liberty and then the stadium. It really feels otherworldly and like an apocalypse has happened. It's really cool. So then, it shows Natasha talking to her team that now recons the world, which I saw Black Panther and I forget her name. She plays Michonne. Diana Guerrera, I don't know how you say her name, but whatever her character is in Endgame, she's alive and she's reconning. Sorry to forget her name, I don't really remember. But then Captain Marvel, she has a new haircut, a short haircut, and she's going around reconning as well, looking for any threats on Earth, and Raccoon is doing the same, and then Steve talks to her about how they're trying to move on, and Steve also leads this therapy group to kind of ease people into this new world and comfort them, and that's kind of nice to see. It's not a long scene. And the director, Joe Russo, I believe, is in it, and he's playing a gay guy, and something about he went on his first date with a guy for in like some odd years or something, and he cried at dessert or something. He said something like that. These symbolic things happened during that, and what else? So then Ant-Man eventually breaks out of the quantum realm because if you remember, I watched Ant-Man and the Wasp 2, sort of. I kind of watched it, and he gets trapped in the quantum realm at the end when everyone turns to dust because of Thanos' snap. And in Endgame, he eventually comes out because a rat runs across in this old abandoned storage area where his van is. That the van has the quantum realm machine inside. Rat runs across the controls, hits a button that lets him out, so he flies out, and he only feels like he's been in there for 5 hours. So he's walking around this new world where things are overgrown. There's not a lot of people, and things just look dead. And there's this kid riding on a bike as he's walking down near his Scott Lang's old home where he resides near that area. And this kid rides on a bike, and he asks what happened. The kid just kind of looks at him, then goes away, and then he sees his daughter, and she's aged because it's been 5 years, the 5-year time jump. She's alive. But before that, he was looking for her in this kind of big memorial for everyone that died. Didn't find her name. He found his name because he was trapped in the quantum realm. They couldn't. They thought he was dead, but he wasn't. So he finds her, and then he starts thinking about time travel, and he tells Steve and Natasha, and then eventually they meet up with Hulk. And there are two really things. There's one thing, I wouldn't say I didn't like it, but I think it was just a bit weird. And we'll get to that. So they meet the Hulk, Professor Hulk, which is basically Bruce and Hulk combined, which is a talking Hulk that looks 100% like Banner, if that makes sense. Has the exact look, facial features of Banner, because Hulk in the original Avengers in 2012 it looked like Banner, but also looked mostly like just the Hulk. This just looks like a green, huge, muscular Bruce. It really does. It's funny. And that grew on me. I didn't really like it at first, but now, it's not too bad. So they find him, and then he goes to the base as well, because they think he might know something about time travel, and they begin working on it. They develop a machine, and they send Scott Lang back in time. And I thought that was really cool. And, once they were doing that, you knew it was going to be about time travel. And then they send him, and then he comes back as a boy, and then he comes back as like a baby, and then an old man. It was a really funny, comical scene. And then eventually Hulk and Rocket Raccoon go to Professor Hulk, and Rocket Raccoon go to find Thor. And they find Thor, and this is the thing that still kind of bothers me, is that when they find him in New Asgard, which is this place that the remaining Asgardians from Thor Ragnarok, when Ragnarok occurred, when Asgard was destroyed. New Ragnarok is just a place on Earth where the Asgardians reside, like this little shabby looking night town sort of thing. They find Hulk, and he's fat, and he's drinking a bunch of alcohol, like barrels of alcohol, and he's just downing food. And it's funny. It is really, really funny. But, it was weird at the same time seeing him fat because, I wouldn't say it didn't ruin any part of the movie, but it just felt off in some scenes. But it's a really comical scene, and then they get him, and then they start looking for the stones. The people start thinking, Natasha, Steve, start thinking of ways to get the stones. But before that, I believe they go to Tony Stark's house, like this little log cabin near a lake, and he has a child, a little girl, and he eventually starts to find a way to look at time travel, and he eventually discovers time travel real quick. So then they start looking for the stones in time to find where they can find the most stones in time. So they go to New York. They go to Vormir. They go to the 60s at a military base, and then I'm leaving out one. Whatever planet Peter Quill was on when he was doing his dance and kicking the rats in Guardians of the Galaxy. I forget what that was, but so they go to New York, and Captain America fights himself there, and they get the stones after this clumsy way of getting it. Tony gets knocked out by the old Hulk coming down the stairs, and you see the old Avengers, they dressed behind the scenes. They wore the same outfit from 2012 Avengers. You see scenes rehashed from New York, and you see old Captain America, new Captain America. You see old Tony Stark, new Tony Stark. You see the old Hulk, and then Professor Hulk, and he's really embarrassed about it and ashamed. And he does. There's this really comical scene where Professor Hulk just starts gratuitously beating up stuff and smashing stuff. That's kind of funny. And yeah, so eventually they do get the stones. Professor Hulk encounters the Ancient One, and she kind of does her spirit hammer thing that knocks his spirit out of the body, spirit out of the Hulk's body, and then it's real Bruce Banner walking around in this astral form talking to the Ancient One. She eventually gives him the Time Stone because she realizes Doctor Strange gave away the Time Stone, and if he gave away the Time Stone, he's supposed to be the chosen one, or what? This isn't Star Wars, but like the one that's supposed to protect it, and he gave it away. Then obviously there's a bigger cause, there's a bigger reason for concern. So she gives it to him, and then Loki steals the Tesseract, which is a reason they have to go to the '60s to get it from a military base. One of the parts of the mission in New York went haywire, and Loki ended up stealing it again, teleporting away in his little vacuum portal. So Captain America fights himself, which is really cool, to get what is that blade that Loki carries around? But it has the Tesseract in it, and so that happens, and then they have to go back to the '60s. They get more Pym particles, and then Natasha and Hawkeye go to Vormir, and Black Widow ends up sacrificing herself to save, not only to let Hawkeye live, but obviously to get the Soul Stone. So they get that, and they get all the stones and whatnot from New York and there, and then they get the Tesseract from the '60s, and they get the Pym particles, and then I forget how they got the what is it? It's the Purple Stone. Is that the Power Stone? I forget how they got that. I don't know if War Machine got it, but or what, but actually yes, I believe they did, because Nebula stuck her hand. I might be wrong, but Nebula stuck her hand inside the device that was keeping the Power Stone in place, and then she pulled out. I think War Machine took it, but I'm not too sure. But anyway, that happened, and eventually they all get the stones, and I know this seems like a really short description for a 3-hour-long movie, and it doesn't feel like 3 hours. It went by pretty quick, both times I saw it, but, I mean, it didn't feel too awfully long, but I'm talking through it really quick, but there's a lot more little stuff that I'm missing, just so you know. The movie's not short or anything, it's 3 hours long. So they eventually go back to the HQ base. They go back to the Avengers HQ, and they put all the stones in a custom-made nano Iron Man gauntlet, and Hulk ends up snapping to bring everyone back, and he brings everyone back. But during that time, Nebula met past Nebula in the film. She met her old self, and Thanos watches. Thanos gets into new Nebula's memory files, and she was there when Thanos got his head cut off, and so her eyes watching Thanos get his head cut off when they infiltrated that planet where he was at. He watches himself die, and he finds out that he did it. He snapped. He won, but they're getting the stones again, and so he just decides we're gonna have to go after him again. So they find a way to time jump into the future to where they're putting the stones inside the gauntlet, and he's there at the HQ base right as they get the stones and put the stones in the gauntlet, because old Nebula secretly disguises herself as new Nebula by pulling this gold plate off of new Nebula, putting it on old Nebula, puts it on her head, and so she disguises herself as Nebula and then brings Thanos through the time machine, and then there he is waiting to kill him and to take the stones. So once I was about to combine Thor and Hulk, and I almost said whore. Once Hulk snaps, there's a pause, and his arm's all burnt up and useless, and everyone aids him, and then Hawkeye goes walking to his phone, and his wife is calling, I believe, or his daughter, one of the two, and then Scott's looking out the window, and he says, guys, I think it worked, because birds are chirping, life is coming back, and then you just see this nice, cool, shaky, not really shaky, but kind of a little bit of camera shake with this giant view of Thanos' ship, and he just rains missiles down on the HQ facility, and then it blows up, rubble goes everywhere, debris, it just all collapses on each other, on itself, And then Hawkeye manages to grab the gauntlet, which was trapped somewhere, and he runs out through the tunnel and evades some of Thanos' army, which is those real weird crawly things. I don't know if they're the same from Infinity War, but they're those weird crawly monster things, and he avoids them. And then, by the way, no. There's also they also got this was what I was missing. Thor got the ether from, they went to the Thor the Dark World era, 2013, and they went to that era and they took it from Jane Foster, because if you remember in Thor the Dark World, she has the ether inside of her, so they get that. Thor gets Mjolnir back, he calls it, when he's talking to his mom, which is a really touching scene. And then when they're about to fight Thanos in present time, after he just destroyed the HQ, Thor summons Mjolnir, Stormbreaker, and Iron Man is already suited up. Steve has his shield back, and they all go to fight him, and it's awesome because it's crazy. So they did a lot of fan service in this movie, and one of the things was when they were fighting Thanos, Thor gets knocked into rubble over and over by Thanos, and Thor summons Stormbreaker back towards him, and Thanos catches it and starts dragging it towards Thor, and is dragging it into pushing it into his chest armor. And then you see Mjolnir lift up very slowly, and then it hits Thanos, and then it comes back, and Captain America catches it. So Captain America wields Mjolnir, which is really cool to see. I was stoked when that happened. It was so awesome. And then he's using the lightning abilities and whatnot, and he is just kicking Thanos' butt with Mjolnir. And then Thanos eventually gets a hold of Steve and takes his double-bladed sword, which is really crazy strong apparently, because he starts just turning into Luke from Return of the Jedi, and just starts smashing down like Luke did on Vader, and destroys Cap's shield, half of it, and it's all jagged and broken, and then hits him one more time, and Captain America goes rolling in the dirt, and then just looks at it and just like lays there like he just gives up. She stands up, walks as Thanos' army is gathering behind Thanos, this huge 1,000 army men that Thanos is controlling. Captain America walks up the hill and stares at Thanos, tightens his strap. He's ready to take on the entire army, and then you hear a voice on Steve's earpiece, and it's Sam, because the snap, they all came back. And so a portal opens up behind him. Sam says, "On your left," which is a really awesome fan service from Winter Soldier. And here comes Black Panther walking out with two guards behind Okoye, or whatever her name is, and then someone else. And Wakanda starts coming out, and then Sam flies out in his falcon armor and his wings, and then more portals open up as he starts to swirl around. It's a really beautiful shot. And then Doctor Strange comes out, and Peter Quill comes out, and Spider-Man comes out, and all these characters, and Drax, and you have every hero from the Marvel Cinematic Universe coming from the portals, ready to fight Thanos in this huge battle, and it is crazy. And then, Steve gives Thanos this death glare as they're about to fight, and Steve walks all the way through the crowd, summons Mjolnir, pulls it towards him, it gets silent, and he says Avengers, summons it, and then he says a symbol. Finally says a symbol after so many years of tease in Age of Ultron when he says Avengers, and it cuts to the credits, you remember that? So they have this huge fight, and it is awesome. Ant-Man turns giant, he's giant Ant-Man, and everyone's fighting. It's just crazy. So Tony reunites with Peter, and Star-Lord reunites with Gamora, but Gamora is actually from past, because she came with past Nebula and Thanos. So old Gamora meets Peter Quill that was snapped away, and he's like, "Oh, I missed you," and she just nut kicks him, and he falls down. It's really funny. And she's like, "This is the guy I hooked up with," and Nebula says, "Yeah, it was either that or a tree, Groot." And so everyone's there, and it is just a crazy, crazy, crazy battle. So they're fighting, and the battle is just absolutely chaotic and whatnot, and things are just getting destroyed. So then the ship that Thanos and his army came from, the cannons start to aim up, and they're shooting in the air, and they say something's entered the atmosphere. So it's Captain Marvel. She's just dive bombing again. She plows through the ship, and starts just wrecking its interiors, and then flies out, and then all the women get in this huge fight. They all gather up, which is really cool to see. A lot of people said it was like feminism or trying to show girl power. I don't have a problem with it. I really don't. So Scott summons also the van because their time machine that they had was destroyed when Thanos went through into the present time, was destroyed. Scott had a backup time machine to try and send the gauntlet through so that Thanos couldn't get it, which was the van that he came from in the beginning of the movie that he was shot out of by the rat that hit the button. So that happens, and then Thanos somehow gets a hold of the gauntlet, and Captain Marvel and him have a really cool fight, and at one point he headbutts her as she's holding onto the gauntlet, and her head does not budge, and then she like pushes him while flying, like holding him in place, and he eventually like pops out the power stone, catches it in his hand glows all purple, and then just knocks her into oblivion. So then Tony Stark is looking at Thanos, and then he looks at Doctor Strange, and Doctor Strange holds up a finger, and he says, this is the one out of the 14 million possibilities, this is the one where we win. So Tony Stark runs towards Thanos, and he is just fighting with all his might, just holding onto the gauntlet, and Thanos is just kneeing him repeatedly, knocks him off, throws him away. Thanos says, I am inevitable. Nothing happens. So he looks at his hand like this first, and then he turns it around, and you see no stones in the stone slots. And so then it cuts to, Thanos is looking terrified, by the way. It cuts to Iron Man, and the stones are working in place on his actual nanotech, not the gauntlet that they had, because Thanos is wearing it. It actually works into his nano armor, and then he says, and I am Iron Man, snap. After Thanos said, I am inevitable, kind of mocking him. Great, fantastic movie. I'm sorry this review was kind of short. It's a 3-hour-long movie, and I don't want to spend an hour talking about it, although it is a great movie. So with that snap, Iron Man is mortally wounded, and he dies. Pepper's there. I did mention that, but Pepper fights in her armor that Tony said he was making for her birthday or something like that. And so he dies. It's really sad. You know, it is really sad. Peter cries over it. You know, it's kind of backwards, like Infinity War. Tony was mourning Peter, and Peter mourns Tony in the end. And they have a funeral, and everyone is there in black wear. Everyone is there at the funeral, and then it pans to the back, and you see the boy from Iron Man 3, the boy that was living in that little cabin-esque place when Tony's armor sent him, where was it? Alaska? I'm not sure, but somewhere. And that boy's there all grown up at the funeral, and it's really cool to see, and everyone's mourning him, and the proof Tony Stark has a heart, his little chest piece thing is floating on this bed of flowers in the lake, and really sad, really, really sad. So, and then eventually they have to send the stones back so that nothing can happen again, because they still have the stones. So Captain America goes in a new time machine and is sent back in time by Hulk to put all the stones back in time so that time rips or time errors don't occur, because that's what can happen if you don't put the stones back properly. And so he does that, and then they're waiting, and he doesn't come back through the tunnel, and they're like, where is he? So over by a log on a lake, there sits an old Captain America that Sam walks to, and he talks to Sam, and Sam's like, you want to tell me about her? Because he stayed back in time with Peggy. He finally got to be with the love of his life, and he's really old, and it looks fantastic, and he gives Sam his shield, and Sam is the new Captain America. Sam of Falcon. That's where Falcon and the Winter Soldier, the new Disney Plus series or whatever, comes in place. So then the final shot is Steve got the dancing one, and he's dancing with Peggy, and then they kiss, and then that's it. Great, fantastic movie. And I'm sorry this review turned into more of a talk or like a story rehash, but I loved it. I mean, it was great. It really, really was. I do believe that Infinity War and Endgame both were overhyped a lot, but it was still fantastic. So I hope you guys enjoyed this review late review of Avengers Endgame. I will see you guys later. Please like, comment, subscribe. Let me know what you see next, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye!